What do you do when your career in education, something you once loved dearly, starts draining the life out of you? In this episode, I'm talking with Jen Liddy, a former high school teacher and college professor who walked away from the classroom and built a thriving business, helping entrepreneurs get clear on their messaging and brand voice. We dive into how educators can transform their skills into marketable services, why clear messaging is more about empathy than expertise, and how to sound like yourself, but not your professor self when marketing your work. If you're building a business and struggling to explain what you do or how to attract the right clients, this episode is going to change the way you think about marketing. And Jen has generously included a special gift for our listeners. Be sure to download her free offer using the link and the coupon code in the show notes. Now, here's my interview with Jen Liddy. Welcome to Leaving Academia, Becoming a Freelance Editor, the podcast. I'm your host, Paulina Cossette. In 2019, I was a political science professor who was fed up with the stress and hostility of academia, not to mention the low pay. I left my tenure-track job and went from barely surviving to thriving as a freelance academic editor. Today, I own Acadia Editing Services, an editing and coaching business that brings in 6 figures a year. In this podcast, I'll discuss the challenges of academia, what academic editing involves, and what life as a freelancer looks like. If you're willing to jump outside your comfort zone, it is possible to find joy, true flexibility, and a profitable and rewarding career as an academic editor. Thanks for listening. Well, hi, Jen. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Paulina. I love doing podcast interviews, so I'm super glad to be here and talk about this content specifically.
Well, I am thrilled to have you. So you are a former academic, and now you run your own branding and messaging business. And so we're going to get into what exactly that is in a bit. But why don't we start off? Tell us your story. What did you do in academia, and why did you leave? And then what did you end up doing after that?
Why did I leave? So many reasons. So I was a high school English teacher. And I always say, I was a high school English teacher for 317 years, but it actually wasn't that long. It just felt like that.
An eternity.
And then I moved from high school teaching at a community college. So I was a professor. I basically, at that point, I say the people I was really teaching at the college level were kind of like 13th and 14th graders, because those people had not been successful in high school. So by the time they came to the community college, they had either they hadn't had a successful high school experience, and there were a lot of non-traditional students. So I was really the perfect person to teach those people, because I knew how to meet them where they were. And so I actually really loved teaching high school until I didn't, and I could talk about why. And then I really loved teaching college. I thought college teaching was going to be a completely different animal. I thought I won't get the parents calling me, the moms calling me and saying, "Do you know who my husband is?" Or the parents calling me saying things like, I think my favorite one was this kid had completely, this is before Turnitin.com. It's certainly before any AI tools, but this kid had completely plagiarized his paper, and his mom's like, "You don't understand how much time he took
to plagiarize it."
It was 0. Okay. So I thought it was going to be better, but it really wasn't that much better when I got to the college level. I mean, I didn't have to deal with parents anymore, but I still had to deal with, all of the nonsense that goes along with teaching. So I will say, I loved teaching. When I finally figured out that I wanted to be a teacher, and I went to graduate school, when I was 28. So I came later to it. I had great mentor teachers. I was well respected in the schools where I worked. I worked in 2 different high schools, and then I worked in that one college. All the kids knew me. I had a great reputation. So it wasn't like I was treated unfairly. It wasn't any of that kind of garbage. It was just the day day-to-day lifestyle eventually sucked the life out of me. Like having to be in my classroom at, 7:27, you have to be there and ready to go and going to see 150 teenagers today. The year I had lunch in fourth period, it was like 10:24. Oh, you're eating lunch now. But really what got me was the grading. It was just so much, and it was impossible to get work done during the day. And then smartphones came in. And then that was kind of the end of it for me. I was like, I feel like I'm a police person. Like, I feel like all I do is police to make sure people are engaged and involved and not on their phones and not texting. And I was a teacher. I left high school teaching in 2007. And then I went to the college, but I was a teacher when kids still had to like take their phones and like use the buttons like J, K, L, like.
I remember those days.
Remember those days? So they would have their hands under the desk, like texting. I'm like, I don't know what you're doing with your hands under the desk, but like, let's get it up here. Okay.
Whatever it is, you shouldn't be doing it.
Shouldn't be doing it in my classroom. So it was just like the daily, like death by 1,000 cuts. And what really started to shift for me was I realized almost every time I had to go to school, I'd be in the shower. It was always when I was shampooing my hair, and I'd be like, should I just call in today? Would it be easier to get a sub today than to go in? And it was always actually easier to go in than to get a sub. But I just started really noticing how much I was resisting wanting to go to work anymore, and how much I started to resent how being a teacher and an educator in general was like bleeding into all parts of my life. Like I never had any freedom from it. Even in the summer, I'd be thinking about, okay, how can I teach that lesson differently? Or I'd go somewhere on vacation and be like, oh, the kids need to learn about this thing. Let me bring this, to them in some lesson. It was like and that's just the way my brain works. I will give a little caveat here. Turns out owning your own business isn't that different. Like it's not like you get to turn off the lights and go home, really. So that was like something I had to figure out. But I just was so tired of working in a system that was sucking the life out of me in lots of different ways.
There's so much that you said, like the death by 1,000 cuts, is so relatable for me, and I think a lot of people, because I had a similar experience where I love teaching. I had great teaching evaluations, like I taught US politics. So yeah, there were kids who didn't like me just because of, when you talk about how government works and it doesn't fit their story that they've learned from TV or whatever from home. But I loved it. I was great at it, and I enjoyed research too, but I didn't love doing it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And after I had my son, that's what I was doing. And, you're totally right that when you own your own business, you are always thinking about it, but it's not like a stressed out guilt kind of way, like I could never go on vacation before without taking my laptop. Yep. And if I didn't work, I felt guilty about it. It's more of like I love my business and I love all the ideas I have, and I'm going to kind of, make a little note of this and then come back to it when I'm done with my vacation or something. I feel like it's always there, but it's a positive kind of excitement.
It's also more like you're in control. You're not at the mercy of that parent who's going to call in and complain about you. Or I loved teaching too. And I would get great evaluations, but I always felt like there was a performing aspect of it that like, oh, I can't say the wrong thing. But in my own business, it's just, there's more freedom, obviously, having your own business versus being in a classroom and in that kind of a system. It's a different kind of, when you're a teacher or in academia, you are at the behest of somebody else's schedule and life, and it's hard to make that for yourself and not let it bleed into everything. But I swear there is not one day now that I ever wish I was back in the classroom teaching, especially now when I watch my son who's 17. I watch him as a high schooler with using AI, and I see what these teachers are up against. I see what these administrators are up against, and I'm like, no, I would never go back now, knowing what I know now. And I have to say, my colleagues, both at the high school level and at the college level, were absolutely shocked when I told them I was leaving the system. Because it really is a system. And they're like, but your retirement, oh my God. And I was like, you know what? I cannot do this for however many years, like they want me to stay here until I'm 117 and for $24,000 a year that I might get at the end. I can't do it. I'm going to figure out another way to make $24,000 a year in retirement. So I not only had like the beast in my head going, who are you to leave education? You're just a teacher. You don't have any real skills, even though I have like 2 freaking master's degrees, right? But I was always had that very strong inner critic telling me like, this is all you can do. You're just a teacher. And I do put that in air quotes, but then you have your colleagues saying it to you too. And the thing I was lucky not to have was a spouse who he was like, yes, go ahead, leave teaching. We will figure it out. He's an entrepreneur, so he gets it. But most of my friends, like even if they wanted to leave, they couldn't have left because they either had siblings, partners, or parents who were like, are you crazy? What about your every 2 weeks paycheck, right? So those were some of the things I was up against before I was leaving. And I have to say, it was really it was having my husband having my back that really gave me the courage to be like, I just can't do this anymore. I feel dead inside.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree that the sense of dread that like you wake up every morning and you're like, I can't do this anymore. Like it's so oppressive, so painful and awful. And yeah, I remember like mentors and colleagues and stuff saying, but if you leave, you can never go back. You can never come back. And and it was terrifying in the moment. And now it's funny. Like, why would I ever want to go back? That's horrible. I would never want to go back.
I did go back for a little while. I left. And then I was in a different business than I am now. I had my own business with 2 partners. And I did go back because I missed teaching. And I lasted about a year at the college level. And I was like, yeah, still not for me. It's no. I mean, you can go back, like you're just a different person when you go back.
Yeah, but I think it's like the fear mongering of like, if you leave this holy grail job that you've gotten somehow, you're no longer going to be good enough. You're going to be sullied and we're going to see you as the other, as somebody who's no longer qualified to be a professor or something like that. So, but so tell us, what did you do when you left? What did you end up doing?
Oh, well, I started a fitness studio with 2 business partners. There was a woman who I was working out with who was a fitness instructor, and she just had this great vision, and she was really an incredible fitness coach. What she struggled with was the back end stuff, operations, communication. So get her on the floor and she was brilliant, but the back end stuff, she was like really drowning. We also brought on a third person who was actually who is still my best friend. And she was the finance and actual branding person. So we all had a lot of jobs to do. And so we moved into this brick and mortar 9,000 square foot fitness facility where I really had a lot of imposter syndrome because, again, it was like, you're just a teacher. What the hell are you doing here? You don't have an MBA. You don't know what you're doing. So we all really learned how to build a business, kind of that baptism by fire, just from like basically doing it, bumping up against ourselves, changing, doing it, bumping up against ourselves, changing it. And so that business, I ran the operations and communications part of it for 3.5 years. And that was really where I learned, wow, all the mistakes. But you know what else I learned? holy crap, I have so much value that I am bringing here, because guess what educators are really good at? Systems, linear thinking, communicating with people, laying things out, like all of the things that I needed for my job at the fitness studio. Like, it was just so natural to me because I had already been doing it in my classroom for years. And I just had never really valued myself and seen that the expertise that showed up in the classroom, like I was breathing, like it was just natural to me. I did not understand those were actual skills they were transferable. And also, guess what? Educators are freaking smart. How many degrees do you have? Right? Like, you can learn anything. And I just did not, it was a matter of confidence. And I only got that confidence by like doing it. And that's how most of us get the confidence. But I just hope somebody listening to this is like, oh my God, I'm so smart. And I've learned this and I've been able to like maneuver around that. And I figured out the other thing. Like, you can do that in your business too.
I love that so much. That's going to help so many people to hear that. So for everybody listening, let's just rewind that, hit the 30-second back button and listen to that again, because it is so true. You go on this journey through however many years of schooling and university to get these degrees. You are learning that whole time. You are taking in massive amounts of information and synthesizing it and sorting through it and, organizing it in your brain. And then you're learning how to communicate it to other people. And that is exactly what you do when you start a business. Like, so what if you don't know what a CRM is, a customer relation, whatever it is, relationship management, you can learn that, So what if you don't know what an email service provider is? You can learn that. It's not that hard.
Yes, you've already learned way harder things than business, by the way, because what is harder for me I realized when I was a high school teacher, I would see like 150 kids a day, all with differentiated needs. And I had to meet all of their needs every single day, teaching 5 different classes a day. Like, business is way easier than that.
It is. I agree. I think, and you get to do whatever you want, like if you go down one road and you don't like it, you just go, okay, that didn't work out. Let's try something else, and you're constantly learning, you're constantly expanding. You get to use your creativity. I feel like I get to be artistic and with the podcast editing, creating stuff in Canva, for marketing stuff. There's just so much. It's never boring. So yeah, I think any academics out there totally have the skills to go into business and figure it out, as long as you're willing to try and, put yourself out there and make mistakes and just learn as you go.
True. And honestly, as academics and educators, we are always making mistakes. We're just usually making them in front of really vulnerably in front of a bunch of students, right? And the beautiful thing is, like, it's actually less vulnerable as an entrepreneur because nobody's really watching that closely. Like, the way that my kids used to watch me, they would know every outfit I wore, if I had my hair straight or curly last week. Like, they just paid attention. Like, nobody's actually really paying that much attention in your business. And it's so great to have the freedom to be like, oh, that didn't work. Let me try something different, without feeling like you've been vulnerable in front of, 27 ninth graders.
Yeah, that's right. Even if you get on social media and have a ton of followers or something, people are just kind of scrolling through. They're not out to scrutinize everything that you say and every move that you make. So speaking of things that we say in business and messaging, tell us what you do now.
Yeah. Well, I basically took a long time to get here. So I did the fitness studio from 2013 to about the end of 2016 into 2017. And then I had noticed how beginner and really creative solopreneurs struggled. So then I became kind of a business development coach and an accountability coach. And then I realized right around the end of 2019 that I really lit up when I got to the point of business development where I would pull people's messaging out of their head, pull their content out of their head. And I was like, oh, right, I'm a word nerd. I was an English teacher, duh. So I really just niched down into content creation, which in 2020 really blew up. And I had like my first 6-figure year that year. And it was very interesting because I was hustling my butt off and I made this 6 figures, which as an educator was an enormous deal for me to just make 6 figures out of thin air. And I was really working very hard. And again, working a lot of hours. It wasn't that much different than teaching at that point, except that I was in charge and nobody was writing up reports on me. And I was like, okay, so what happened in about 2022, 23 is content creation was everywhere, was everything. Everybody's talking about content creation. So I realized to differentiate myself, I really needed to whittle my expertise down because in 2019, content creation was a clear enough niche, but in 2023, it wasn't. So I was like, what are the parts of doing my job that I really love at this point? And it's this very specific lane of marketing, which is messaging and brand voice, which means I basically teach experts who like do their thing, like it's breathing, like it's in their cells. I teach them how to be able to talk about it to their audience in a way that their audience leans in and goes, oh yeah, that's me. I need that. But also in a way so that you feel like yourself, because especially for academics and people who never have to market themselves, marketing feels really like it's like a lot. It's like, oh my God, I have to be a 24/7 commercial for myself. I hate this. I hate being my own cheerleader. I hate being my own math piece. So how do I show up and actually sound like my real self, not my professor self, because nobody really wants to hear your professor self in your marketing, but your real self, your brand self, without like being overly vulnerable and like authentic to the point where you're just like telling people things that you don't want to tell them. Like, how do you still have privacy? That's brand voice. So brand messaging is how do I say the things I need to say so my audience leans in? And how do I say these things in a way that feels like me so they always know it's me showing up different from somebody else in my field? So I blend those two things together, and that is all that I do now is brand voice and messaging. And I pull that out of your head and I give you what you need so that we can train your AI tools, so that if you're using an assistant, we can train your assistant. If you're using a copywriter, we can give it to your copywriter. But basically, I give you everything you need so that your genius shows through and it sounds like you, and your audience is like, oh my God, yes, I need that.
That's so interesting, because I think there's so many nuances to messaging, and marketing, and like figuring out, I guess, and maybe you can walk us through sort of what are the steps to figuring out your brand voice. But I would assume first, if you're a new business owner, let's say I'm leaving academia and I want to become an academic editor, you'd have to figure out who your ideal client is.
Number
right?
one.
Whether
yes, nobody wants to do that work, but yes, that's number one. Nobody wants to do that.
You're right. So in my program, I sort of walk the members of the program through this process because they know what editing is, but they're not really sure in the beginning. Do I want to work with grad students and edit dissertations? Do I want to work with faculty and edit journal articles? And so it's sort of this process of self-discovery and figuring out what do I really enjoy doing, and how do I build the business that I really want, and will make me money too. So how do you? Let's say that you you want to be a dissertation editor and coach. So your ideal client is grad students who are finishing their PhDs or whatever. What's sort of the next steps of that? How do you figure out how to talk to them without, as you said, sounding like a professor?
I'm going to give you a quick framework that I think will make a lot of sense. It's called the brand MVP framework, okay? The first thing is the M for messaging. I just want you to think of messaging as a mirror. It's basically the forward-facing part of your marketing, the content, the concepts, the context of what your audience needs to understand. So the mirror of it is, when you say words, does your audience see themselves in those words? The M is super important because when we're an expert in our thing, we get real mired down in this is what I want to tell you. This is what you need to know. And it's basically the same thing that you did when you were a professor, is you get in front of the classroom and there's the professors who are I'm going to tell you what you need to know. And then there are the professors who are like, they're really struggling with this thing. This is what I need to give them right now to meet them where they are, right? And it's that second kind of professor who is mirroring back to the students what they need to hear. That's what messaging is. Does that make sense?
That I love that analogy because I think that's going to make sense to so many people. Is like exactly what you said. The professor in the suit and jacket with the elbow patches writing on the chalkboard or something
behind the podium.
Declaring this is truth versus the professor who is talking about real life and why this is important and how is this going to affect you and and why should you care about it. So that makes total sense. It also makes me think of I've seen a lot of new editors when they make their website, they're like, here's my bio. I have 18 degrees and I've published 37 articles and hire me to edit for you, and I have to explain like we're all self-centered individuals. We want to know, how are you going to help me? And
what's in it for me?
You have to figure out your niche. Like I'm going to save you time. I'm going to reduce your stress. I'm going to whatever it is.
That's the mirror. What does your audience care about? What did your students care about? Do you remember in Bloom's taxonomy of thinking, like there's the low level stuff like the know, the understand, but then there's that mid-range stuff like, how can I apply this? How can I solve this problem? Like that's what messaging does. It helps people understand it helps them frame how your work will help me solve my problem. It will help me apply it to my life. And that's what really good, clear messaging does by mirroring back to them. I see you. This is what you're struggling with, or this is what you want. I can give it to you. Later on, they'll find out how many degrees you have and how many institutions you've taught at, right? But right now, when you meet them, you just have to show a mirror so they can see themselves in your words.
It sounds like a lot of empathy too, that you're showing that you've been there and you get it and you understand what they need. Is that right?
It probably does require, it depends on your brand voice then. We'll move into that in a minute because you might have a really empathetic brand voice, but it's more about knowing your people so deeply and being able to put into words what they're struggling with and what they want in probably a way that they may not be able to do that for themselves. I know that you're a graduate student and you speak 2 languages, 3 languages, but English is your 3rd language. And you know your stuff inside and out, but it's those little nuances of the English language that are driving you crazy in your dissertation. I can help remove that stress for you. Like that's messaging that meets that client where they are.
So pinpointing what they're really struggling with, even if they don't know it, they feel like they're struggling and they're suffering and they don't know how to articulate it to you. But because you have that experience and you've worked with so many clients, you're able to be the mirror and show them, I get it. Here's how I can help you.
Yes, it reminds me, this part of the messaging always reminds me of when my son was very little and he didn't quite have the words and he certainly didn't have the nuances. So when I would leave, when he was like 18 months old, I would say to him, I know you're sad. I know you're worried mom's not going to come home. I know you feel frustrated that you can't tell me that. And then just saying those words to him, he would be like, yes, you get it. You totally get it. And that's what we're doing with our messaging is mirroring back to people. Sometimes they are aware of what they are looking for, but sometimes our audience is problem unaware. And by reflecting that back to them, you're not stirring up their pain just for the sake of agitating it. You're stating it so they can feel seen, heard, understood, and like really leaning in and go, wow, I've never heard it said that way. Or thank you for putting it into that perspective.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. I could tell you were a teacher because you articulate those things very clearly.
Well, you know what? That's the funny thing about owning my own business now is I still get to teach, but actually everybody in the room wants to be here.
Yeah, they actually care. They've done the readings.
Yes.
So what is in the MVP framework then, we've talked about the messaging and the mirroring. What is the V?
Yeah, this is where voice comes in. And to go back to that example of the professor in the classroom, like think about all of the personas of professors. We have the uptight, buttoned up, behind the podium, like that kind of professor that I I forget what it's called, but that kind of professor who's going to like, you're an empty vessel and they're going to dump the information into you. I remember that from graduate school. I can't remember like the framework of it, but like that's a persona, right? Like that professor is going to have a very specific voice. Now, when I was a professor, I was a more relaxed voice. I was a more like meet them where they are voice. I was more on the same level as them. I was encouraging, like that was my persona in the classroom. And if you look across, if you think back to your own department, you can really think about all these different voices and personas. Some of them translate outside the classroom. Some people go into their classroom and then like that's the container where they have this particular persona. But we get to do the same thing in our marketing and in our businesses when we're sharing our messaging, because if our messaging is for our audience's consumption, our persona is something we create not only to be recognized by them so that every time they show up, they know what to expect, but it's also for us to kind of create almost a container for ourselves so that we don't feel like, oh, I'm marketing myself and I have to bring them in. I'm going swimsuit shopping, so I have to bring them into the swimsuit fitting room with me because I have to be authentic and I have to be vulnerable. Like, no. Your brand voice and persona, you get to decide which parts of you your audience gets to consume. It's just like when we were in a classroom. And I used to like think about this with my students, especially in high school, but it also happens in college. You know, like these kids these students go from classroom to classroom to classroom. And every classroom has a different teacher with a different set of rules, with a different personality, with a different way of approaching them, with a different voice and persona. And they know what to expect in each room, right? And that's what owning our brand voice and persona does for our audience. They know that when Jen Liddy shows up on a podcast, if you've listened to me on other podcasts, like I sound the exact same. I don't like have, one way of being when I'm on a different kind of podcast. If you read my emails, like this is my voice. This is how I sound. So that's what having a brand voice does for us. Our brand voice consists of the words that we choose, like our vocabulary. It consists of the tones that we want to convey in those words. What are the emotions behind what we're saying? And how do we put it all together stylistically? Like what is our sentence length? How do we style the things that we put together? Those things comprise our brand voice. And then we like kind of decide, okay, what else is part of my brand persona? How do I want to show up? I'll give a really great example that I think could help put this into perspective. I was working with a client to kind of unveil her brand voice and her personality. And she is a psychiatrist, so she's got this doctorate. She's a business owner, and she's also a mom to a 2-year-old. So there's 3 kinds of big personas that show up in her life. And I take people through a linguistic and tonal analysis. And then I do like an analysis of their content to help us come to your brand voice. It's not like I just figure it out. It's not like God tells me or it's intuitive. Like I actually take people through a linguistic analysis. So I was going through hers, and we came up with, this brand persona and voice for her. And she's like, I like this, but I really want to be more like this. And she cited several other people in her industry who are much more like up here and cheerleadery and excitable and like rah, rah. And I said to her, it's not aspirational for you. It's literally just not who you are in your soul. Like it's not who you are. And if you tried to adopt a persona because you're viewing it online as other people are having success with this brand voice and persona, it's working for them. If you were to try to adopt that, you're going to burn out. And also your audience is going to feel like this just doesn't feel real. Like this feels like kind of bullshitty. And you can't, if a brand voice is unsustainable for you, then that is not your brand voice. So as much as your brand voice is for you, it helps your audience know you, but it needs to be pretty consistent so that the way you show up is the way you show up pretty much all the time.
That's really interesting, and I think that's a great example. I think a lot of us sit here as new business owners, and we look at Amy Porterfield and what's her name, Jenna Kutcher, yeah, and beautiful women who are all well put together, and they make $20 million a year, whatever it is, and we feel like we have to do that, and they're lovely, wonderful people, wonderful businesses, but that's not necessarily us, right? I mean, if it is, great, go for it. But that's certainly not me. I'm not showing up. And I think I've struggled with that myself. Like, should I do my hair and put on makeup, for every coaching call, or even the pod? No, that's not me. I don't want to live like that every day, And the thing I love about the online business space is there's no right or wrong answer here. It's you have to figure out, at least from what I'm hearing from you, you have to figure out what that persona is that you want to put forward, and then be consistent about it.
Absolutely. And make it as close to who your true essence is, because otherwise it's unsustainable. So you do get to have privacy. List it out. What are you never going to talk about? For some people, their kids are completely off topic. They are never going to talk about their private life or their home life or their kids. And for other people, that's really a natural extension of their personal brand. But you have to. The word persona, I think, has some negative connotations because it feels phony, but it's not phony. It's just a part of you that you're showing, just like that was happening in the classroom. You didn't show your students every part of you. They got the professor part of you, and that felt good. You do the same thing online, except the thing is, how is that professor persona maybe going to hold you back in online business? In a way, it probably needs to be crafted and nuanced to be less like professorial, because remember, you don't have a department chair anymore. You don't have people calling you out and rating you on ratemyprofessor.com, right? We don't have to be, we can kind of open the door a little bit more.
That's great. Maybe more like the professor at the water cooler or something.
There you go.
That,
yes.
right?
Yes.
The way you talk with your colleagues as opposed to your superiors or your students or something like that. That's really helpful. So then we've got the messaging, we've got the voice and the persona, and then what is the P?
The P is the power of the word you. And this is a sneaky copywriting trick I like to share with everybody. So in our heads all day long, we're like, I need to go to the post office today. I need to fill up my car. I need to put the laundry in the dryer. I. So it's very typical that when we start writing content, we write it from this first person perspective. But our audience doesn't care necessarily about our first person perspective. So if we can get people engaged with a simple word, you, they lean in. And the reason is everybody's favorite word is their first name. But we don't usually have their first names available to us. So if you tweak it to be you, it's a very powerful shift. I have a really great example about this. I think, whenever Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, that was probably 2021, 22. I don't remember how long it was ago.
Something like that.
So when she died, I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen to our country now? This is terrible. And I wanted to say something about it. And if you go back to the day she died, there are so many posts about people who are like, I'm so sad. I'm worried about our country. I. And I was like, I want to say something that is impactful, that shares how I feel without it being about me. So I did a little research and I realized she had such an impact. So I said, in ways that I don't think people really understood. So I wrote this. This is on my personal Facebook page. I do not get political on my business page, but I wrote, do you know somebody who was born in 1974 or before that? A sister, your mom, your aunt, maybe even you. Did you know that? And then I went on to list all the things that women couldn't do, like get a freaking checking account before on their own, right? Like all of these things. And I had framed it in the you point of view, and people leaned in. And I had made it public. It got shared like 560 something times from my personal Facebook page. And that had from people I didn't even know. Like it had just been really, it had resonated, and nothing like that had happened to me before, where something that I had said was resonant enough that many people were going to share it. And I realized the power of the word you by framing things in a way that made people care about it. So it's very similar to the mirroring, but this is a copywriting trick. And the reason I include it in the framework is it's so easy to write from the first person point of view. And it's a habit we have because we're talking to ourselves like that all day. And it just isn't as resonant for the you as the you pronoun is. And there's places where the you pronoun doesn't always work, especially if you're like, especially in 2025, if you're calling people out on something or saying something that's potentially like shame-inducing or like might make people feel blamed about something. So you have to be a little parsimonious with it, but it is very impactful when you're trying to get people to really lean in as a collective or even as an individual and say like, wow, that really, yes, that feels so true to me. Wow, that really affects me. And the word you can really do that in a lot of instances for us as the heavy lift in our messaging.
So it sounds like we're also trying to plug into people's emotions, right? Trying to get them to feel something, whether it's humor, like in the form of memes, or that resonates with them, or something emotional, making them feel moved to action. How do we, in the rather dry context of editing an academic research paper, how do we tap into that? How do we figure out how to mirror them? Like, what it is that they need? Like, surely we can draw on our own experiences as trying to publish and the struggles of that. But how do we know what to write about?
It's such a great question. Nobody ever asked me this question. It's brilliant. Well, first of all, you have to talk to your people. You have to do research and find out how they are describing what's holding them back. And I know that editing seems dry. Like I know we're using this as an example, but it's like any service. When we take care of something for someone, it's not just about the thing that we're getting done. Like when my house cleaners come every other Monday, it's not just that my house got cleaned. It's that I didn't have to wake up on Saturday and spend my entire weekend doing it. I had time freedom, right? I didn't have to argue with my 17-year-old about whether his bathroom is going to get clean because I know it's going to get clean. So it saves my relationship. My husband and I don't feel like, oh my God, I'm doing more of this and he's doing that. I don't have to even have those conversations with my husband. Like it's money so well spent that it's more than about the thing. It saves me time. It saves me energy. It saves my relationships. It makes me feel free. Like that's just house cleaning. Like what could be more boring and basic than that? And I bet if you are an editor, for example, and you talk to the people who need editing services, like if you could have someone take this off your plate, you've put all your IP into it, and you can give it to me safely, knowing it won't be shared anywhere, knowing that I am so well positioned to take care of this for you, and you're going to have freedom for the next 2 weeks while I'm working on it, and then I give it back to you, and you're able to submit it and get your doctorate and move on to the next thing. Like, I don't know, that's pretty emotional to me. Like it doesn't have to be like treacly emotions. Like it doesn't have to be like a sob story emotions, but all of us buy because of an emotion that we might feel about something. Even if you're in the line at the grocery store and you see a Kit Kat and you're like, oh my God, I just know how good that would taste. I love that little crunch. I love that little thing. I sing the song in my head every time I buy one. Like it's an emotional thing that we buy the Kit Kat, not because it's a Kit Kat, because it's like, oh, I get to like, give me a break. It's so good. Everything is emotional, and that's why we buy anything. And I know it's hard to believe that when you are such a logical person with a bunch of letters behind your name and like, yes, you take care of all the things, but everything is emotion.
That's so true. Yeah, I think it can be hard to sort of tap into that, but I think you're right about talking to people, and especially for academics who want to become editors who are still in academia, like you don't have to be weird about it, but like as if you're having lunch with your department members, ask them, what are you struggling with, with this paper? And I think listen very carefully to how they respond, how they talk about it, right?
The listening piece, this is where people go wrong with research. Because if you and I are having coffee and I just want to research, Paulina, tell me what your struggles with messaging are. And you start telling me, and then I start giving you solutions because I'm so smart and I have so much to share. I will never hear what you have to say. It's, again, always positioning the other person. It's the same thing. Like, that's what listen to what people have to tell you. Nobody wants to do this work either. Nobody wants to, they want to guess and they want to take it from their own head. And you are not your best. You're not your ideal client. So listen to people and ask good questions. Like, if this was taken off your plate, what would it free you up to do? What would it be like what would you fear about handing this over to somebody else? What are your concerns? What would it be like on the other side of having somebody who is really well positioned to take care of this for you? Like, do that. How would you feel if it got cleaned up and then I handed it back to you? Like, what would that feel like?
That's great. Yeah. And it's still that the importance of emotion, I think, threaded in there. How would you feel about this? How would you feel if you had to continue working on this dissertation for another 2 weeks or, that kind of thing? What does that bring up for people?
Well, to give you a really clear example, say my cleaning person was writing herself a website. And I have said to her, Maria, when I walk in the door after you've been there, and I forgot that you've been there, I walk in the door and like the angels are singing and everything is sparkling and like the floors are humming because they're so clean. And imagine if she could take that language and put that on her website. Wouldn't you love to open your door and feel like the sun is shining inside your house because everything feels so clean and fresh? That's what I do for your house. Like, that is a much more compelling website header than I clean houses, right?
Yeah, or I will vacuum for you or something like
right.
that.
It's not about the service, it's about the feeling.
Yeah, that's
or the
so
outcome,
great.
Really. The outcome is what we're looking for, the transformation.
Yeah, the bigger picture of what you're getting as a result of the service. Yeah.
So position your audience when you're writing anything in the center, so if you're an editor, sure, you do editing services, but like, what do they care about? Because yes, I do dissertation editing as your header. That centers you, right? Like, but what could you say that they would care about? I'm not an editor, so I don't have that language yet, but that's how you want to shift things in your messaging.
That's great. Thank you. So, what I like to wrap every interview with is to ask people to share a couple pieces of advice for new business owners. But what I'd like to tweak that a little bit with you is how do people get started with this? So we talked a little bit about like they can sit down and have lunch with their colleagues, or maybe, they schedule, if they're not in academia anymore, they schedule a Zoom call. But if they're, creating a website, starting to think about how to show up on social media, what are some, maybe one or two other things that they should be doing to get this ball rolling, right? To start nailing their messaging from the beginning, as opposed to what I did, which was writing a bunch of terrible stuff and like learning the hard way.
I cannot overstate how important the interviewing your ideal potential people are. And I would also say, don't interview people you've already worked with. They already speak your language. They're like kind of farther down the road, but like speak with people who are struggling with your thing and get like, I cannot overstate how important that is and how much people don't want to do it. first of all, you think you're going to be wasting people's time and that it's going to be bothering them. People love to talk about their problems. Like people love to talk about themselves. So just give them, 20, 30 minutes to do that. And then transcribe it. It's absolute gold and it will be woven into your messaging. The second thing that I would suggest to just getting started is to say less, which I clearly did not take my own advice because on this interview, I have just like, blah, 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 blah.
Oh, it's gold though.
Say less in your messaging. So you think you need a website with humongous walls of text. Nobody's reading walls of text. People are reading lines. Their eyes are scanning. The less you can say, the more impact you will have. This is something that as professors, we are not very good at. We have so much to share. So if you can think about putting your messaging out there and saying less, rather than like, I have 10 things I want to say in this email or 7 things I want to say in this, whatever, LinkedIn post, say one today. And then tomorrow, say the second one. And then Wednesday, say the next one. I call this fish food. Give people fish food rather than fire hosing them, because let them like really resonate with what you say and then come back for more. It rings more out of all you have to say. It's like wring the heck out of your brilliance, but don't overwhelm people with everything you know or everything you think they need to know. So say less is one of my favorite idioms that I say all the time.
Yeah, I love the fish food idea too, that you're sprinkling a little bit and to take the fish pun further, you're hooking them to want to learn more. And then they come back and you hook them again to learn more. And then, yeah.
And the last thing I would say, which may be hard for an academic to jump on board with, is that AI is not your enemy. It's not going to steal your IP in terms of like, if you put something through it and you're like, I want to assess it for my brand voice, I want to assess it for my messaging, I want to assess it like, how can I change this from the first person perspective to the second person perspective? Use AI to make your life easier. And say that you wrote a big giant LinkedIn post, for example. Put it into your AI. So the way that I'm calling this is, I call this the you algorithm. Like you get to train your AI to learn you and then be your friend as you're putting your messaging out there. Like teach it, speak back to it. I don't like what you did there. Do this instead. I never want to see another M dash again, like those kinds of things. And take something long that you wrote, put it into your you algorithm on your favorite robot and say, this is too long and I know it. Break this up into 5 LinkedIn posts for me. Make sure it's in using the second person point of view. Make sure like my brand voice is on target. I don't like emojis, so don't use them. Like basically train it. And then don't be afraid of it, because it's one of the things that will suck the life out of you. When I was a teacher, it was grading. But when I was an entrepreneur, it was creating content. So how can we use the tools that are available to us and not be afraid of them, kind of be the wind at our back?
Yeah, I love that. ChatGPT is so amazing for messaging, I think, and brainstorming. And lately I've been using it as like a business strategist to figure out, like I want to offer this thing, but I don't know how to do it or price it or put it together. And it just like is so great for brainstorming. So yeah, absolutely.
I agree completely. So, but I do find a lot of people are afraid of it, or they're not using it well and they just ask it to churn out it churns out something that doesn't have the right messaging, the voice, or like really the right perspective, the point of view with the second person.
Well, thank you so much. This has been amazing. I wish we had more time to get into how you work with people, because, we've talked before about how you do that essentially content analysis, which is something I think that will appeal to so many academics who are becoming business owners, because it's methodical and empirical and
empirical.
So if anybody out there listening is wanting to, I highly recommend, and I say this from experience, if you can hire somebody who is an expert in something, in whatever it is that you need, like brand voice and messaging, right off the bat, it is going to save you hours and hours and hours and so much money to hire them and have them show you how to do this right the first time, so that you're not wasting all that time banging your head against the wall with ineffective messaging. messaging. So I highly recommend anybody out there who wants help with this sort of thing, get in touch with Jen, because clearly she's fabulous. How can they get in touch with you and maybe get more information about how you can help them sort through all this?
Yeah, there's two things. You can go to my website, which is just jenliddy.com, JenLiddy.com. You'll find a button on there if you want to set up a consultation. But something I think that your audience would really love as a quick hit is a toolbox that I have. It's called the Backstage Brilliance Marketing Toolkit, which is a way for people. It's got 21 tweak and repeat content prompts that are you-centric. So it kind of hits everything I talked about today. And it basically is a mini training. You could do it on audio or video that takes you through how to meet your audience exactly where they are and use these prompts so that you always sound like yourself and give messaging that's not like how-to messaging, but really like thought leadership messaging. So you can get that at jenliddy.com/backstage. And if you use the code Paulina, so thank you for hosting me, Paulina, you can have it for $0. It's usually like a $27 little mini training that I sell. But I would love for academics to have this because I think they are uniquely positioned to really serve people, but really struggle with the marketing piece. So that's what the Backstage Brilliance Marketing Toolkit is designed for specifically.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Thank you so much. I'll put those links in the show notes, and it's been so great to have you here.
Oh, it's been so fun to talk about this. Thank you so much. What a nerd. I'm such a word nerd.
If you're unhappy in academia and you think you might be a good editor or writing coach, check out my course, Becoming an Academic Editor. This digital course is paired with a 12-week group coaching program to support you through your decision to leave academia or not, and to start building a profitable and rewarding academic editing business. Learn more by going to acadiaediting.com/become an editor. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time.